I need to be honest with you. Something is happening right now in the supply chain that most people are completely missing. And I am not talking about the usual prepper panic stuff. I'm talking about quiet shortages that are already starting, items that are disappearing from shelves, and most people have no idea it is even happening. I have been tracking grocery inventory data for the past 8 months, and what I am seeing is genuinely concerning. There are 11 specific items that are either already hard to find or are about to become nearly impossible to get. And here is the thing, these are not the obvious items everyone thinks about. Look, grocery prices are rising faster than most people can keep up with. I've done the math for you. I put together a free emergency pantry blueprint that lists the exact 15 items you can get at Aldi or Walmart today to feed your family for 2 weeks. It's 28,000 calories for less than the cost of a takeout pizza. You can grab that shopping list for free at the link in the description, so you can stop worrying and start prepping. These are everyday products that you use constantly, but probably take for granted. Number 7 on this list, I went to 4 different stores last week trying to find it. 4 stores. And when I finally found some, there was a limit of 2 per customer. If you found this video, hit that subscribe button right now because I am going to be tracking these shortages as they develop, and you need to stay ahead of this. Number 4 is something that happened so quietly that unless you specifically looked for it, you would have no idea there is a problem. But manufacturers are already reformulating products because they cannot get enough of it. Let me tell you what got me paying attention to all of this. 3 months ago, I walked into my regular grocery store to grab something simple, and the entire section was just gone. Not low stock, completely empty. I asked an employee what was going on, and she looked around like she did not want anyone to hear and said, "We have not gotten a shipment of that in 6 weeks." The distributor keeps saying next week, but it never comes. That is when I started digging deeper. I started talking to store managers, warehouse workers, and people in logistics. What they told me was alarming. There are specific products that are becoming increasingly difficult to source, and it is not making the news because it is happening gradually. But it is happening. So, let's get into these 11 items, and I am going to tell you not just what they are, but why they are disappearing, and what you can do about it right now. Item number 1 is canned tomatoes. And I know that sounds basic, but hear me out. The tomato harvest in California, which supplies about 95% of the processed tomatoes in the United States, has been absolutely devastated for 2 years running. First, it was the drought. Then it was labor shortages during harvest season. Then fuel costs made it nearly impossible for farmers to justify planting. I talked to a produce distributor 2 weeks ago who told me that the major brands are already rationing supply to grocery stores. They are getting 60% of what they ordered, and it is going to get worse before it gets better. Walk into any store right now and actually count the cans of tomatoes on the shelf. I did this at 3 different chains last weekend. Every single store was noticeably low. And these were not picked over shelves. This was all they had. Here is what makes this critical. Canned tomatoes are the backbone of so many meals. Pasta sauce, chili, soups, stews, pizza sauce. If you cook at home regularly, you go through canned tomatoes constantly. I personally went out and bought 50 cans 2 months ago when I first started seeing the patterns. And I am going back for more because the price has already gone up 30% since January. If there is one thing you do after watching this video, go buy canned tomatoes. Not next week, today. Get crushed, diced, whole, sauce, paste, whatever you normally use. Get as much as you can reasonably store and afford, because by summer I genuinely believe you are going to see limits on how many you can buy, if you can even find them at all. Item number 2 is something most people do not think twice about until it is gone: black pepper. Yeah, that little spice you probably have sitting on your counter right now. Here is what is happening. About 35% of the world's black pepper comes from Vietnam. Last year, Vietnam got hit with weather patterns that destroyed huge portions of the crop. On top of that, there have been massive disruptions in shipping routes from Southeast Asia. Pepper prices at the wholesale level have increased 70% in the past year. 70%? Now you might be thinking, okay, pepper costs a bit more, so what? Here is the so what. Major food manufacturers are already cutting back on how much pepper they put in their products to save money. And grocery stores are starting to limit how much they order because the price is so high. I went to a restaurant supply store 3 weeks ago, a place that always has massive containers of everything, and they were completely out of black pepper. The guy behind the counter said they have been out for 2 weeks and have no idea when the next shipment is coming. Go check your local stores right now. Look at the spice aisle. I am willing to bet the pepper section is looking pretty thin. And if it is not yet, it will be soon. Here is what I did. I bought 5 of those large restaurant-sized containers of black pepper. It cost me about $40 total. But that is probably a 3-year supply for my family. And honestly, if prices keep going up like they are, that $40 investment might be worth $100 by next year. Black pepper does not go bad. It loses potency slowly over time, but we are talking years. Store it in airtight containers in a cool, dark place, and it will last basically forever. This is one of those items where spending $50 right now could save you a huge headache later. Because when you cannot get black pepper, you are going to realize how much you actually use it. Item number 3 is going to surprise you, butter. Now, I am not talking about shortages like empty shelves, at least not yet. But the price of butter has gone absolutely insane, and it is about to get worse. Here is why. Dairy farmers have been going out of business at record rates. The cost of feed has skyrocketed, fuel to run the farms has doubled, and the margins were already razor thin. In the past 18 months, the United States has lost about 8% of its dairy farms. They just shut down because it is not economically viable anymore. On top of that, butter production is incredibly resource intensive compared to other dairy products. It takes about 21 pounds of milk to make 1 pound of butter. So, when dairy supply tightens, butter is one of the first things to become expensive or scarce. I have been tracking butter prices at my local store every single week since November. In November, a pound of store brand butter was $3.49. Last week, that same butter was $5.99. That is a 71% increase in 6 months. Now here is the good news. Butter freezes beautifully, I mean perfectly. You can freeze butter for up to a year with zero quality loss. Some people say even longer. So here is what I have been doing. Every time butter goes on sale, even a small sale, I buy the maximum amount I can and throw it directly in the freezer. Right now I have about 30 pounds of butter in my deep freeze. That cost me around $90, spread out over 3 months of sales. My family goes through butter pretty regularly, so that is maybe a 6-month supply. But here is the key. I locked in those prices. Even if butter hits $8 a pound this summer, which I think it will, I am covered. If you have a deep freeze, fill it with butter right now. If you do not have a deep freeze, this might be the time to invest in one, because butter is just the beginning of items you are going to want to freeze. Item number 4 is one of those things that is so common you never think about it until you need it and cannot find it. Canning lids. Specifically, the 2-piece metal canning lids that you use for home canning. Here's what happened. During the pandemic, everyone and their grandmother suddenly decided to start canning. Demand went through the roof, but the problem is, there are only a few manufacturers that make these lids, and they could not keep up. Then raw material costs went up. Aluminum and steel prices increased dramatically. And now, even though demand has cooled off a bit, production has not caught back up. I tried to buy canning lids last month. I went to 3 stores, completely sold out. I ordered some online, and the delivery estimate was 5 weeks. 5 weeks for canning lids. Here is why this matters, even if you do not can. Canning lids are how people preserve food at home. If you cannot get lids, you cannot preserve your harvest, you cannot take advantage of sales on fresh produce, you cannot put food by for winter, and if there are actual food shortages, home canning becomes critical. These lids are cheap, like $3 for a dozen, but if you cannot get them, it does not matter how cheap they are. I finally found some at a small hardware store in a rural area. I bought 10 boxes. That is 120 lids. It cost me $30, and honestly, I wish I had bought more because I have not seen them in stock anywhere since. If you do any home canning, or if you think you might need to start, get lids now. Not the reusable kind, get the standard metal lids that everyone uses. Because come summer, when people want to can tomatoes and pickles and jams, there are going to be none available. Item number 5 is cooking oil, and I am talking about all of it. vegetable oil, canola oil, olive oil, all of it. Here is the situation. Cooking oil comes from various crops: soybeans, corn, sunflowers, olives. Every single one of those crops has been hit with problems in the past 2 years. Ukraine, which was one of the world's largest exporters of sunflower oil, obviously had their production destroyed. Drought in Europe hit olive crops hard, soybean costs have gone up because of fertilizer prices, and palm oil, which is in everything, has faced export restrictions from major producers. The result is that cooking oil prices have quietly doubled in the past year, and availability is starting to become spotty. I was at a wholesale club 2 weeks ago, the kind of place that always has pallets of everything, and they were limiting cooking oil to 2 bottles per membership. I asked why, and the employees said they are having trouble keeping it in stock. Here is what makes this a big deal. Cooking oil is one of those staples that you do not think about until you run out. And unlike a lot of other items, there is not really a substitute. You need fat to cook, you need oil for baking, there is no way around it. The good news is that cooking oil stores really well. As long as you keep it sealed and away from heat and light, most oils last 1 to 2 years easily. I went through my pantry last month and realized I only had 1 bottle of vegetable oil. So I went out and bought 12 bottles. It cost me about $60. That is probably a year's worth for my household. I also bought a big jug of olive oil and several containers of coconut oil. Total investment was around $100, but that is at today's prices. If oil prices keep climbing like they have been, that same amount might cost $150 or $200 by the end of the year. Store them in a cool, dark place. I keep mine in a basement closet. They will be fine. And you will be really glad you have them when cooking oil is either crazy expensive or hard to find. Item number 6 is dried beans and lentils. Now, I know what you are thinking. Beans are a prepper staple. Everyone talks about beans. But here is what is different. For the first time in years, I am seeing actual supply issues with dried beans, not just price increases. The drought across North America has hit bean crops hard. On top of that, several major bean processing facilities have had issues, fires, equipment failures, labor problems. And export demand has increased, meaning more of what is grown here is being shipped overseas. Last month, I went to buy pinto beans at my regular store. They had 3 bags. 3. The shelf was basically empty. I asked when they would get more, and the manager said they have been trying to keep them in stock, but shipments have been inconsistent. Dried beans are one of the most shelf-stable, affordable, nutritious foods you can store. They last for years. They are packed with protein and fiber. They are incredibly versatile. But if you cannot get them, none of that matters. Here is what I have been doing. Every time I am at a store, any store, I check the bean aisle. If they have the kinds I use, pinto, black, kidney, navy, I grab several bags. I am not clearing the shelf, but I am buying more than I normally would. Over the past 2 months, I have probably accumulated 40 pounds of various dried beans. That cost me around $50, but that is months worth of meals. The key with beans is storage. Keep them in airtight containers in a cool, dry place. I use food-grade buckets with Gamma Seal lids. Toss in an oxygen absorber if you want them to last even longer. Stored properly, dried beans can last 10 years or more. And even if they get old and take longer to cook, they are still perfectly edible and nutritious. If you eat beans regularly, stock up now. If you do not eat beans regularly, maybe it is time to start, because they might be one of the most reliable protein sources available in the near future. Item number 7 is something I never thought I would have trouble finding, but here we are, baby formula. Now, even if you do not have a baby, stay with me, because this affects the entire supply chain in ways you might not realize. Last year, there was a massive baby formula shortage that made national news. Plants shut down, recalls happened, it was a disaster. Things got better for a while, but here is what is happening now. The formula market is incredibly consolidated. Just a few companies make almost all of it, and those companies are still struggling with supply chain issues, ingredient shortages, and production problems. I have a friend with a 6-month-old baby. She told me 2 weeks ago that she is having trouble finding the specific formula her baby needs. Not just out of stock at one store, out of stock everywhere in a 20-mile radius. She finally ordered it online and had to pay double the normal price from a third-party seller. Here is why this matters for everyone. When parents cannot find formula, they panic. And when people panic, they buy up everything they can find. That creates shortages of other related products, regular milk, powdered milk, certain supplements. It creates a ripple effect. If you have a baby or know someone who does, tell them to stock up on formula now. Buy a few extra containers every time you shop. Yes, formula expires, but it usually has a shelf life of a year or more. It is better to have extra and rotate through it than to desperately need it and not be able to find it. And if you do not have a baby, be aware that this is happening, because it is a sign of how fragile the supply chain is for everyday essentials. Item number 8 is going to sound weird, but it has become a real problem. Glass jars, specifically canning jars, like mason jars. Here is what happened. The same surge in home canning that caused the lid shortage also caused a jar shortage. But jars are even harder to manufacture because they require more raw materials and more energy. Glass production is incredibly energy intensive. With fuel costs up, glass manufacturers have cut back production, and there just are not that many companies making canning jars anymore. It is mostly one or two major brands. I tried to buy canning jars last spring, could not find them anywhere. I finally found some at a farm supply store, and they were almost double the price I paid 2 years ago. Here is why you should care. Canning jars are not just for canning. They are the best way to store dry goods: rice, beans, pasta, flour, sugar, spices. They are airtight, rodent-proof, and you can see what is inside. If you are building any kind of food storage, you need jars. Beyond that, in a real shortage situation, having the ability to preserve food is priceless. If you have jars and lids, you can take advantage of any fresh food that becomes available and preserve it for later. I have been buying jars whenever I see them on sale or in stock. I probably have 100 jars of various sizes now. Some people might think that is overkill, but I use them constantly, and I know that if I need more, I might not be able to get them. If you see canning jars in stock, grab them. They never go bad, they are reusable forever, and they are becoming harder to find. Item number 9 is a big one: coffee. Yeah, your morning cup of coffee is about to get a lot more expensive and possibly harder to find. Here is the situation. Coffee is grown in specific regions of the world, mostly Central and South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. All of those regions have been hit with weather problems, droughts, floods, temperature swings. On top of that, coffee prices are tied to global commodity markets, and those markets have been incredibly volatile. I have been watching coffee prices for months. In January, a standard 12-ounce bag of decent coffee was about $7 at my local store. Last week, that same bag was $10.49. That is a 50% increase in 6 months. And it is not just fancy coffee. Even the cheap stuff has gone up dramatically. Here is what a grocery manager told me. Coffee is one of the items they are watching closely because supplier prices keep increasing, and they are worried about their ability to keep it in stock at a price people are willing to pay. If you drink coffee, listen carefully. Go buy coffee right now. Buy as much as you can reasonably afford and store. Whole bean coffee stays fresh longer than ground, so if you have a grinder, buy whole beans. But even ground coffee, if stored properly in airtight containers in a cool, dark place, will last 6 months to a year without major quality loss. You can even freeze coffee to extend its life further. I bought 20 pounds of coffee 2 months ago when I first saw prices climbing. It cost me about $120. That is roughly a 6-month supply for my household. But here is the thing. That $120 at January prices would probably cost me $180 today. So I essentially saved $60 just by buying ahead. If coffee is part of your daily routine, do not wait on this. Prices are going to keep going up, and at some point, availability is going to become an issue. Item number 10 is something that affects everyone, even if you do not realize it: wheat. And I am not just talking about flour, I am talking about all wheat products: bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, baked goods. Here is the global situation. Ukraine and Russia together export about 30% of the world's wheat. That supply has been massively disrupted. On top of that, droughts in major wheat-growing regions of the United States and Canada have hurt yields. And fertilizer costs, which are insane right now, mean farmers are planting less wheat because it is not profitable. The result is that wheat prices have surged, and that is flowing through to every product made with wheat. Bread prices are up, pasta prices are up, cereal prices are up, and it is going to get worse. I talked to a baker who runs a small bakery. He said his flour costs have increased so much that he has had to raise prices twice this year, and he is considering cutting back his hours because people are not willing to pay the higher prices. Here is what you need to do. Stock up on pasta right now. Pasta is cheap, it stores forever, and it is one of the easiest things to cook. I bought 50 pounds of pasta 2 months ago. Various shapes, different brands, whatever was on sale. It cost me about $40. That is months worth of meals. Also, if you use flour, buy it. But remember, regular all-purpose flour only lasts about 6 to 8 months before it starts going rancid. So either buy flour and plan to use it, or better yet, learn to store wheat berries and grind your own flour. But at a minimum, stock up on pasta. It is one of the most shelf-stable, affordable, calorie-dense foods you can get. And when wheat shortages really hit, pasta is going to be one of the first things to disappear or become crazy expensive. Item number 11 is the one that worries me most, and it is something most people do not think about: prescription medications. Now, I cannot give medical advice, and I am not a doctor, but I can tell you what I am seeing and what experts are saying. About 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in medications used in the United States come from overseas, mostly China and India. When there are disruptions in those supply chains, medication shortages happen, and they are happening right now. The FDA has a drug shortage database. Go look at it. There are currently over 100 medications listed as being in shortage. Some of those are critical medications, antibiotics, heart medications, diabetes medications. I have a family member who takes a specific blood pressure medication. Last month, their pharmacy could not fill it. They had to call 4 different pharmacies before finding one that had it in stock. Here is what you need to do. If you take any prescription medication regularly, talk to your doctor about getting a 90-day supply instead of 30 days. Most insurance will cover it. Some doctors will even write a prescription for a 6-month supply if you explain the situation. Beyond that, if you take over-the-counter medications regularly, pain relievers, allergy meds, cold medicine, stock up. These are not perishable in the short term. Most have shelf lives of several years. I went through my medicine cabinet last month and realized I had basically nothing. So I made a list of everything my family uses regularly and went and bought backups. It cost me about $80, but now I have at least a 6-month supply of basic medications. This is not about hoarding. This is about being prepared for disruptions that are already happening. If there are medications you or your family depend on, make sure you have backups. All right, so here is the reality. These 11 items are either already experiencing shortages or are about to. I am not trying to scare you. I am trying to give you a heads up so you can take action before it becomes a crisis. The key is to start now. Do not wait until the news is talking about it, because by then, the shelves will already be empty. Go through this list, figure out which items are most critical for your household. Make a plan, set a budget, and start stocking up bit by bit. You do not have to do it all at once. Every time you go shopping, grab a few extra of these items. Over the course of a month or 2, you will build up a solid reserve. And here is the thing. Even if I am wrong, even if these shortages do not materialize as badly as I think they will, you have not lost anything. You have bought items you will use anyway. You have just bought them at today's prices instead of tomorrow's higher prices. That is just smart financial planning. But if I am right, and I really think I am based on everything I am seeing, you are going to be so glad you did this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because I am going to keep tracking these shortages and updating you as the situation develops. Drop a comment and let me know which of these items you are most concerned about, or if you have noticed shortages in your area. I read every single comment, and I want to hear what you are seeing on the ground where you live. Next week, I am going to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes people make when stocking up and how to avoid them, because buying the wrong things or storing them incorrectly can be just as bad as not preparing at all. You do not want to miss that. Stay safe out there and start stocking up today.